So let's start in the Western Conference. You have all the teams in front of you here. The highest seeded team we had that I found of interest was the Kings here. We talked about it a bit. Minus 400 to make the playoffs, plus 300 to not make it. It goes all the way down to the Lakers at the number 13 seed. Is there anything here that stands out to you, whether it's something you want to jump on or something that you're like, okay, this number just seems a little wrong to me?
I mean, I feel bad saying it because I just, praise them for how good of a first, and it's not the first half. It's really, we're through almost 75% of the season now.
Mm.
So what Sacramento has been able to accomplish, like that's legit, and their offense is legit. The thing that is not legit, however, is their defense. Their defense has struggled. The defensive rating, is not really where you want it to be. So you could get them plus 300 to not make the playoffs. Now, I understand that they're the 3 seed, but they're
Mm.
sitting just 3 games up on the Pelicans in 7th. And the Clippers, the Suns, the Mavs, all reason to believe that those teams are coming. To say nothing of, are the Wolves going to put together a run? Are the Warriors going to put together a run? And then you got some teams outside looking in, Portland, the Lakers. Those teams are not going to tank. So just given the number of teams that still have a heavy incentive to continue trying to win games, are not going to pivot into a tank, although I guess Portland could, but maybe we'll touch on that later. If the Kings, all they need to do is fall down to 7th, and then you look at those other teams, if they're healthy, the Kings are not going to be picked to win a lot of those playing games. So I think the value, if you're talking about value at plus 300, I think that's where I see the best value of this list.
Yeah, and again, I kind of alluded to this earlier in the show. Like, you just kind of have to do it, right? Out of like principle. Like, I'm not saying to throw the whole mortgage on it, but like it's the Kings we're talking about. This is a team with the 3rd hardest strength of schedule remaining, according to our good friends. Any basketball fan, if your team is tanking, you know it. They're tankathon. The 3rd hardest strength of schedule remaining in the West to this point. And you mentioned it. It's not like out in the East where you have a pretty good idea of who the top 4 seeds are going to be in whatever order. And even if, with Giannis missing some time for the Bucks, even if they fall out of the top 4, like, they're not missing the playoffs, right? Maybe they have to do a play-in game, but that would be disastrous at that point. But something like the Kings, I completely agree. Plus 300 at that point. You have a team like the Mavs, who are the 6th seed right now. They're at plus 700 to not make the playoffs. And obviously that number is a lot bigger, but I don't know which one of those, honestly, I see more value in, just because I trust that the Mavs with Luka and with Kyrie will steer the ship a little better than maybe the Kings will.
I think so. The Mavs, obviously, with the 2 big names, and like this goes into what we were talking about last week, in that the Mavs have disappointed people who have backed them more than any other team in the league, because it's the Doncic factor. People are going to bet on Doncic. You're going to think that Doncic could pull it out. And I think the same is going to go for the play-in tournament if they do happen to fall into the play-in. Now, that said, as of right now, they're the 6th seed. Pelicans dealing with injury issues. Who knows when Zion Williamson's going to come back? We'll touch on that later, I think. You already talked about Minnesota. Is there any real indication that they're going to put it together in a big way? I think it's really just the Warriors, to me, are the team from that lower area you got to worry about jump up and taking a playoff spot. But even then, Steph Curry's going to miss another, 5-6 games, something like that. I don't think that Dallas bet would be nuts. I mean, again, at plus 700, you're getting that's nice value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is significantly nicer value than any of the other teams in that area. One that also stood out to me before we move on to the Eastern Conference, the Thunder, plus 450. I know coming into this season, everyone was kind of like, are they really just going to tank again? Like, is SGA going to be out for the season by like the 2nd week? Because, they need draft picks. They want a high pick. Interesting year to decide to be good, by the way. But I mean, the Thunder have been a pesky team all season, and dare I say they have borderline been a pretty good team. They're in the outer edge of the play-in spots now. And again, for these playoff bets, it's only if you get one of those top 8 seeds. So you have to make it through the play-in. But at plus 450, I mean, you're getting the same odds as the Jazz at plus 425. They're a seed right below them. And, Vegas has some more confidence in other teams. The Blazers at plus 320, the Lakers at plus 155. The Thunder have the third easiest schedule remaining in conference. This seems like the number to jump on out of those like lower tier teams.
It is, if you just look at how the two teams have played and the statistical makeup of the two teams, it is absurd that the Thunder are getting plus 450 and the Wolves are getting plus 155. It makes absolutely no sense until you consider the fact that the Timberwolves have, perhaps more than any other team in the league, having just made the Gobert trade, the most incentive to try to whether to eke into the playoffs. And I know I'm just speaking for myself. I've been waiting all year for the other shoe to drop in Oklahoma City. When are they going to start shutting guys down? When are they going to admit that, okay, we're gonna go for one more high lottery pick? For as close as they are to the playoffs, they're not that far away from being in a good draft spot. I will believe that they will make a hard push for the playoffs when I see it. I have my doubts.
It's interesting because I had that train of thought too, and obviously that is what they have baked in here. That's why you're getting such a high number, because there is a very good chance that they just absolutely shut everyone down. But I would have figured it would have probably happened at this point because, like you mentioned, we're quote unquote halfway through the season. We're not actually halfway through the season, so I'm just a little weary because I would have thought it would have happened at this point because there are so many other bad teams that are really giving them a run for having that worst record. I.e., my Spurs, Rockets, Pistons, Hornets. Like those are some bad teams. Right there. Speaking of the Eastern Conference, though, let's go through the same exercise. Highest seed here is the 5th seed. Again, there's a little more clarity at the top. Just right off the bat, the Nets kind of stand out. To not make the playoffs at plus 800. They've been surprisingly good after the KD trade and after the Kyrie trades. But, I mean, this is too good to be true, right?
So right now, 2 up on the Knicks in 6th and 2.5 up on the Heat. Talk about waiting for the other shoe to drop in the opposite direction. I know, again, longtime Knicks fan, a lot of respect for Pat Riley. I've just been waiting all year for the Heat to just flip the switch. Heat culture, baby. Hashtag it up. Maybe Kevin Love is gonna come and help. The South Beach is gonna revitalize his career. They're the team I'm looking at as the team to why this Brooklyn bet seems too good to be true. The Knicks, I can't speak objectively about the team that I cover and follow and root for.
You don't have to. It's okay.
But their statistical profile is one of a team that should make the playoffs, especially when you consider they're getting Mitchell Robinson back, and when you look at specifically their statistical profile since they got off to that shaky 10-13 start. They've been, again, just looking at the net rating and everything, they've been one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the league, all things considered, since that start. So I think they're going to make it. They have every incentive to make it. They are not even going to think about tanking. Brooklyn, again, they could have traded Mikal Bridges for picks. They didn't do that, so that lets you know that the ownership still wants to win. At the same time, if they get into a situation where they can, grab a chance at a lottery pick this year, I don't know. And again, you talk about teams like the Hawks, the Wizards, even maybe a team like the Raptors. They just made a win now trade to pick up Jakob Poeltl. Like, these teams are clearly trying to win now. The Bulls, we haven't even mentioned the Bulls, trying to win now. The Nets, you could at least see them talking themselves into, hey, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing if we fell out of this. Now, I don't know. The numbers seems too good to be true, though. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. I admittedly do not know exactly what picks they even have still in their arsenal because they traded away a bunch to the Rockets. But, I mean, again, this is something to check. If they don't have their pick this year, they don't have any picks this year. It's like...
They have their pick this year. The Rockets have swap rights, but the Rockets are realistically, given that they're the worst team in the league, they're not going to swap. So the Nets could be looking at this and being like, hey, we could maybe have one extra bite at the apple if we play this thing smart. But again, it seems like they're trying to win games. So who knows?
Yeah. the Heat were also a team I had highlighted as just like again, like when is it going to happen? And like, oh shit, is this just like actually not going to happen? I don't know that I'm bold enough to say that they're not going to make the playoffs, just because again, hashtag Heat culture. Um, but it is definitely a situation to monitor. Both the Heat and Nets top five hardest remaining strength of schedule in the East. Want to throw two other numbers at you. You mentioned a couple of these teams. The Hawks minus 155 to make the playoffs as the 8th seed right now, plus 125 to miss. And the Raptors plus 165 to make the playoffs. Again, if a team drops out, someone has to take their spot. How do you feel about those two numbers? Because those are two teams that are like, okay, yeah, the Raptors were buyers. The Hawks just fired their head coach. So what's going on between them two?
I like the Raptors more out of those two, mostly because the value's better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're gonna think I'm nuts, but there's a number on here just below the Raptors that I'm looking at. And again, you want to talk about the team that has perhaps been most snake bitten and most surrounded by negativity. You could say the Chicago Bulls. Plus 450 to
Hmm.
make the playoffs. They're currently in the 11th seed. I think they're riding a 6-game losing streak, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
There is still talent there, though, and it's just there's value in plus 450. And again, it's kind of like the inverse of the Thunder. People see the name the Thunder, and they're like, well, the Thunder aren't going to make the playoffs.
Hmm.
I'm not going to put money on. People who have been paying attention this year be like, the Bulls. The Bulls are a hot mess. Why would I light my money on fire? Strange things happen, in the NBA. And again, it's not like they don't have the talent, and it's not like the teams ahead of them. Again, talking about the Raptors, Wizards, Hawks, even if you want to throw in like the Heat, Nets. It's not like there's any world beaters here.
Hmm.
So they made it last year. Maybe they find some of that magic. We'll see.
And I mean, hey, they just signed the freshest buyout candidate in Patrick Beverly, so things are turning
Yes.
around in Chicago. Yeah, it is.
Yes. He was what was missing.
Yeah, I considered putting them as a disappointment, but I think just when that crew was assembled, I think it was pretty obvious that this was probably not going to be a team contending for an NBA championship. So we're talking about playoffs and making it, but again, play-in and making the play-in, participating, not having to make the playoffs from there, but participating in the play-in provides interesting value because you have a lot of negatives at the top, just negative value, just Lakers at minus 110, for example. Um, but are there any teams on either conference that you're like, okay, you just have to make the play in. You don't have to make it out. Just participate in it. I'm not talking Spurs plus 15,000. But maybe I don't know if you're not confident on the Thunder. Maybe Thunder in the play-in at plus 240. Anything like that interest you? Nets at plus 400.
So the two teams out west that I'd be looking at would be the Mavs at plus 290 and the
Mm.
Clippers at plus 330. Again, everybody is just kind of going to pencil them in. Um, I don't think it's nuts that one of those teams has to make it out of the play-in tournament. If only, and really, if you place that bet, it would essentially be a bet on the Warriors getting their stuff together and making a push into that top six. And then in turn, it would be a bet that obviously the Nuggets and the Grizzlies are not going anywhere. It would be a bet of confidence in the Kings. It would be a bet of
Mm.
confidence in the Suns with Kevin Durant. And then when you have the Warriors, well, I just named 5 teams. So if you believe in all of those teams, then one of the Clippers or Mavericks are going to need to take the long way. Um, and then as far as the East is again, I don't love any of these quite as much. Again, go back to my Bulls craziness plus 265. If you feel like, hey, they're going to get in, maybe they lose when they get there. Plus 265, you
Mm-hmm.
could do worse there. Um, how about this one? Plus 1,000.
I was
Fight
waiting for that.
the fight in Orlando Magic. I don't know if they're going to be able to continue to pull off what they have been doing for really the better part of 2.5 months, because it's been that
Mm.
long that they have played, really good basketball. Maybe again, you talk about a team that has incentive to maybe pivot into a tank in the last 2, 3 weeks of the season. Plus 1,000, especially again, the Bulls, the Raptors, the Wizards, the Heat, the Hawks. These teams are hot messes.
Hmm.
The Magic have been a feel good story. They're playing good basketball. Nobody wants to play them. They
Weird
come and they
year.
bring it
Weird
every
year.
night. Yeah, absolutely. So plus 1,000, I kind of like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Magic are that team that are like, all right, they're bad. They're not a contender this year. They're not even a team that could be like frisky this year. But they're definitely a team that has realized they're like, okay, we have enough talent. Like it's time to start
Yes.
trying to win. Like I think that this year they had that realization. They have good guards. They have good forwards. They're in a good draft capital spot thanks to the Bulls. So I see this as a nice long shot pick. I like plus 1,000. I think if I'm going a little more safe, I'm still going with the Nets at plus 400 because I don't see them completely falling out here. And I think there are too many teams at the bottom of the East. Because if things just like start going south for the Magic, they might just be like, all right, let's just rest everyone and like we'll try to just get another good pick and try again next year. I think the Nets are I think they're going to fall off a bit. I think they still make the play in here. So plus 400 is probably where I would go there. But I like the Magic and the fighting Magic. I like it. They got to start getting that printed on the T-shirts.
And how much fun would it be to root for that one to pay off for the Magic to make the play? Come on.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun.